This is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Ayotunde Balogun.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, after months of suspense, the president effects a cabinet shake-up. 5 ministers shown the door, 7 new nominees presented to the Senate for confirmation. President Bola Tinubu sacks the Ministers of Women Affairs, Tourism, Education, State Minister of Housing and Urban Development, and Youth Development. The president also scraps 2 ministries, that of Niger Delta and Sports Development, merges Ministry of Tourism with Culture and Creative Economy. And the plight of out-of-school children in focus as the Senate calls for a national summit.
On business news tonight, Nigerian interbank settlement system set to launch Diaspora BVN platform to enable non-resident citizens operate domestic bank accounts anywhere around the world.
On sports news tonight, President Bola Tinubu has appointed Shehu Diko as chairman of National Sports Commission following the scrapping of the Ministry of Sports Development.
And from Abuja, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Mr. Nyesom Wike, gives reasons for the road projects in the FCT. He says his priority is to reduce the hardship of residents.
And in international news from London, the US Secretary of State has urged Israel to bring the hostages home, end the war, and have a clear plan for what follows.
President Bola Tinubu has sacked 5 ministers in his cabinet and reassigned several in what the presidency says is a bid to reinvigorate the administration's capacity for optimal efficiency. The development, which was announced after the Federal Executive Council meeting, also sees 2 ministries scrapped, 1 renamed, and 7 ministerial nominees being named. Our State House correspondent, Larry Lasisi, reports.
The 12th Federal Executive Council meeting commences with the swearing-in of Abdullahi Bello as the chairman of the Code of Conduct Bureau. The meeting proceeds into a closed-door session immediately afterwards. And a few hours later, some ministers arrive to speak on the resolutions of the meeting.
The erstwhile Ministry of Niger Delta has now been renamed Ministry of Regional Development. The President and members of Council today took a decision to rename that ministry so that all these other regional bodies will come under this new Ministry of Regional Development. There is no longer, from today, the Ministry of Sports Development. All activities and programs of the Ministry of Sports Development are now being brought under the National Sports Commission. Number 3, the Ministry of Tourism has also been scrapped. Activities of that ministry are now being brought under the Ministry of Arts, Culture, Tourism, and Creative Economy. So that ministry will now be called Ministry of Arts, Culture, Tourism, and Creative.
A few minutes after the ministers leave, the special advisor to the president arrives with more developments.
The president has approved the immediate implementation of 8 far-reaching actions to reinvigorate the administration's capacity for optimal efficiency, pursuant of its commitment to deliver on its promises to Nigerians.
In addition to the developments earlier outlined by the Minister of Information, the Special Advisor announced new portfolios for some ministers. The Minister of State Education, Honorable Dr. Tanko Sununu, is now Minister of State Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction. The Minister of State Health, Dr. Olatunji Alausa, now Minister of Education. The Minister of State, Water Resources, Barrister Bello Goronyo, now Minister of State Works. Minister of Niger Delta Development, Honorable Abubakar Momo, now Minister of Regional Development. And the Minister of State Steel Development, Ubamegeri Amadu, now Minister of State Regional Development. Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Doris Uzuka Anite, to now be the Minister of State Finance. The Minister of Sports Development, Senator John Eno, will now serve as Minister of State Industry, Trade and Investment. Minister of State Police Affairs, Iman Suleiman Ibrahim, to serve as Minister of Women Affairs. Minister of State for Youth Development, Ayodele Olawande, becomes the Minister for Youth Development. And the Minister of State Environment, Dr. Salako Adeboye, now to serve as Minister of State Health.
These are the following ministers who have been discharged, and as you know, the President met them this afternoon to thank them for their services for the nation. They are as follows: Barrister Huju Ken Oaneye, Minister of Women Affairs; Lola Adejon, Minister of Tourism; Professor Tahir Mama, Minister of Education; Abdullahi Muhammad Guazo, Minister of State Housing and Urban Development; Dr. Jamila Bio Ibrahim, Minister of Youth Development. So only 5 ministers were discharged.
He also announced 7 new ministerial nominees. Dr. Nentawe Yilwalda as Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction. Megeri Dingyadi as Minister of Labour and Employment. Bianca Odumegu Ojukwu as Minister of State Foreign Affairs. Dr. Jumoke Oduwole as Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. Mukhtar Meha as Minister of Livestock Development. Honorable Yusuf Abdullahi Atta as Minister of State, Housing and Urban Development, and Suwaiba Ahmad as Minister of State, Education. All subject to confirmation by the Senate. 2 other appointments were announced, that of Shehu Diko as the chairman of the National Sports Commission and that of former Minister Sunday Dare as the special advisor to the President on Public Communication and Orientation. From the Presidential Villa, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
Now, the President's cabinet change has been eliciting some reactions so far. A Lagos lawyer and activist, Mr. Jiti Ogunye, who was on our program, Politics Today, shares his thoughts on President Bola Tinubu's cabinet shake-up.
There is an agitation in the country for a leaner, a smaller government that is efficient. I understand that the name of the game is politics. If you have a government, politics will play a role in constituting that government. So there's always an inclination to pay IOU, to fulfill promises to those who are angling for appointment. But in this country now for some years, since the Oronosai Committee report, and even before then, there had been an agitation that government should be leaner so that it can be more effective to cut waste and excesses. I mean, that government has no business creating cynic chaos for people who just want to be in government. And so if you have a Ministry of Agriculture, there might even be a Minister of State for Agriculture, I don't know. And then on top of that, you are creating a special ministry for livestock development. The question is, are you creating a special ministry for piggery? Are you creating for fishes? And you call it piscatorial ministry, and so on and so forth.
So the National Assembly and the House of Representatives has mandated its Committee on Power to investigate the persistent power grid collapse which plunged the entire country into darkness. Raising the motion of urgent national importance, Honorable Mansour Soro informed the House that the power grid has collapsed 8 times in 2024 alone, exacerbating national hardship. Our correspondent, Daily Omoyeni, reports.
The second day of plenary for the week is yet to resume, and lawmakers are seen bantering amongst themselves. As principal officers settle down, the lawmakers get down to business and call for accountability from the power sector due to the incessant national grid collapse.
That the entire states in the northeast, northwest, and some part of the north central zones has been thrown into darkness over the last 2 days in what the transmission company of Nigeria, TCN, described as faulty transmission lines. To mandate the House Committee on Power to investigate this unending power grid collapse, and the House Legislative Committee on Compliance to ensure compliance.
Another issue on the front burner is a proposed amendment to the Constitution to provide for an increment in the distribution of revenue from natural resources among the tiers of government.
It will discourage states from overdependence on the federal allocation that comes to their states. And Mr. Speaker, as you all know, there are processes ongoing that many of the laws we find in the exclusive list. There's been an agitation that they should also be moved to the congruent list where states can have equal rights. For example, Mr. Speaker, the issue of correctional centers where states can also build and also take responsibility to renovate, which hitherto has been the responsibility of the federal government.
After plenary, the House Committee on Student Loans meets with the management of the Nigerian Education Loan Fund, urging them to ensure that the upcoming disbursement of 90 billion naira is more inclusive, following reports indicating that the Southeast region had the fewest beneficiaries from the 10 billion naira disbursed so far. Daily Omoyeni, Channels Television News.
Staying with the National Assembly, and in an attempt to resolve significantly the syndrome of out-of-school children, the Upper Chamber is proposing a national summit. This resolution was taken during the Senate plenary after the submission of a report of the Committee on Education, Basic and Secondary, on the compelling need to tackle the challenge of out-of-school children in Nigeria. The chairman of the committee, Senator Usman Adamu, disclosed that over 2 million out-of-school children have been enrolled in the last 1 year through the collective efforts of the agencies of the ministry working on out-of-school children education. Our National Assembly correspondent, Gloria Umezoke, reports.
The protracted crisis in the number of out-of-school children became the predominant subject for conversation on the second legislative day of the week. Submitting a report on the compelling need to tackle the growing syndrome of out-of-school children, which is particularly prevalent in northern Nigeria, Senator Usman Adamu opened the debate on the matter.
The committee considered the submission from the Ministry of Education and observed that there is urgent need to hit the ground and activate the roadmap of the federal government to curtail the out-of-school children.
I say it's a shame, because about 10 or 15 years ago, Bill Clinton, former president of America, had to come to Nigeria. What was he coming to do? He was concerned about the plight of out-of-school children. He particularly said, we are sitting on time bomb.
After nearly 2 hours, the debate became even more robust as more lawmakers appeared determined for a solution.
Our committee on basic education particularly should engage. And then in the 2025 appropriation bill, something tangible, something meaningful and reasonable and significant should be made available.
We are not looking at one important areas which all of us should ask questions about. We have billions of naira lying fallow at the universal basic education, with the state unable to come up with their own counterpart funding to address all these menace we have under the out-of-school children.
We must address these things head on. State governors have to come to the table and be honest about taking care of this thing.
This is not the first time the National Assembly is making a relentless push to ameliorate an existential crisis. In 2022, the House of Representatives held a similar summit towards revamping the education sector. This time, the upper chamber resolves to adopt the same solution.
Senate to resolve to have a national summit on the issue of out-of-school children to bring a holistic solution to the menace of out-of-school children in Nigeria. Those in support of the motion say aye, and those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Meanwhile, the Senate has passed through third reading a bill for an act to establish a National Eye Center, DOMA. The passage, which is expected to have direct impact on the nation's economy, is seen as a moral imperative to boost healthcare across the country. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Gas, Ekperikpe Epo, is worried over the continuous rise in the price of liquefied petroleum gas, commonly known as cooking gas, in the country. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you have just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, broadcasting live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. After months of suspense, the president effects a cabinet shakeup. 5 ministers shown the door. 7 new nominees presented to the Senate for confirmation. President Bola Tinubu sacks the ministers of Women Affairs, Tourism, Education, State Minister of Housing and Urban Development, and Youth Development. The president also scraps 2 ministries, that of Niger Delta and Sports Development, merges Ministry of Tourism with Culture and Creative Economy, and the plight of out-of-school children in focus as the Senate calls for a national summit. In legal matters, the federal government has dropped all charges against an executive at Binance Holdings, Tigran Gambayan, on health grounds. Mr. Gambayan has been facing money laundering trial from detention since April this year. The Council for the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission announced the withdrawal of the charges at the Federal High Court Abuja before Justice Emeka Nwite. The hearing is coming 2 days before the October 25th, earlier scheduled as the return date by the trial judge in the open court last Friday. Announcing the withdrawal of the charges, the lawyer said Mr. Gambayan, a United States citizen, was merely an employee of Binance whose activities he was being prosecuted for. The counsel to Mr. Gambayan, Mark Modi, agreed with the prosecution, saying that his client was not involved in the company's broader financial decisions. So let's head to the nation's capital now, and Victoria Longjohn is standing by to give us the very latest from our Abuja studios. Hello, Victoria. Over to you.
Thank you, Ayo. Here in the nation's capital, the Minister of the FCT, Mr. Nyesom Wike, is giving justification for the road projects in Abuja, which he says is to reduce the hardship of residents. The minister assured residents he will leave no stone unturned in the bid to complete the project. Mr. Wike was speaking during the flag-off ceremony of the construction of an access road in the Mabushi district. Our correspondent, Kumbi Aboluwade, reports.
Please be seated. The administration of the Federal Capital Territory is continuing its infrastructure with the flag-off of construction of an access road in Mabuchi district.
Opening up.
This 3.2-kilometer road is expected to be completed by May 2025.
Along with this are going to be provided the conventional or requisite engineering infrastructure of water supply, storm, and drainages, as well as solar street lighting. With today's commissioning, this will definitely open up development in Katempe, Mabushi, Katempe, and the adjoining districts.
Other invited guests speak on the benefit of infrastructural development in the metropolis.
This is another milestone achievement again for the people of FCT and for the residents of FCT and for the Renew Hope administration of Mr. President. And yesterday, the Honorable Minister stated that he's only lucky. I think he's the only minister that his budget don't last 48 hours. Your Excellency, for the record, you make it easier for us. You are the only minister that will bring a budget that is straight to the point. Recurrent expenditure is less than 2 digits.
Before proceeding to flag off the project, the minister pledges to reduce the hardship of residents in the FCT.
What we are doing is to make sure that every district
just like when in Katambe yesterday, today when the Mabushi axis, we will not rest until we see that all the districts are all connected with good roads. These roads are very key for us in order to reduce the hardship our people are facing, and no project under our tenure will last or will stay beyond us. No.
Done with his speech, the minister moves to officially flag off the project. Kumbi Aboluwade, Channels Television News.
And to legal matters now, a federal high court in Lagos, presided over by Justice Dende Digbolu, has convicted and sentenced a 41-year-old Canadian lady, Adrienne Munju, to 11 years imprisonment for importing 74 parcels of Canadian loud, a strong strain of synthetic cannabis weighing 35.2 kilograms into Nigeria. A statement signed by the Director, Media and Advocacy of the NDLEA, Mr. Femi Babafemi, says Munju's conviction followed her arraignment on a 2-count charge before the court by the agency following her arrest at the Terminal 1 of the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos on October 3rd this year. It says this was carried out during the inward clearance of inbound passengers on a KLM flight at the de-arrival hall of the airport. The judge, however, gave the convict an option of 15 million naira fine on each of the 2 counts, bringing the total fine to 100 million naira. And the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Ekperikpe Ekpo, has voiced serious concerns over the continuous rise in the price of liquefied petroleum gas, commonly known as cooking gas, in the country, despite various measures implemented to address the issue. So far, prices have remained unstable, recently jumping from an average of 1,100 naira to 1,500 naira per kilogram. To tackle the situation, the minister has directed that effective from November 1 this year, the NNPCL and LPG producers must halt the export of LPG produced domestically or import equivalent volumes at cost-reflective prices. Additionally, the NMDPRA will work with stakeholders to establish a domestic LPG pricing framework within 90 days.
It is expected that within the next 12 months, all the facilities necessary to blend, store and take delivery of LPG produced in country will be in place and effectively put an end to export of LPG until a time when the market has attained sufficiency and acceptable price stability. C. That NMDPRA within the next 90 days should engage stakeholders within the gas industry and produce a domestic LPG pricing framework as stipulated in Section 122 of the PIA, indexing the allowable cost of domestic cooking gas to the price of producing the commodity in country, rather than the current practice of indexing against external markets such as the Americas and Far East Asia, whereas the commodity is produced in country and the Nigerian people are required to pay a much higher price for an essential commodity we are so endowed with.
Now, still ahead on the news at 10, Nigerian interbank settlement system set to launch non-resident BVN platform to enable diaspora citizens operate domestic bank accounts anywhere around the world. That's some business news to join us again. Welcome back to News at 10, reaching you live on Channels Television. The Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board is asking researchers to take advantage of its 50 million naira research development fund to provide much-needed research in the country. Speaking at the 2024 Science Business Annual Conference organized by Triple Helix Nigeria in collaboration with the board, the Executive Secretary, Engineer Omasola Ogbe, who was represented at the meeting, hinged the nation's socio-economic development on collaboration, innovation, and research.
Members of research institutions and organizations converge on this hall to rub minds on how research and innovation continues to play vital roles in socio-economic development globally. The conference is organized by the Nigeria Content Development and Monitoring Board in collaboration with Triple Helix Nigeria, with the theme Integrating Research, Innovation and Policy.
Our drive was to adapt the operational experience of the global Triple Helix in fostering knowledge exchange among scholars, practitioners, and policymakers on the collaborative impact of interaction between university, industry, and government. The Triple Helix Association has a global network of 6 regions, including North America, Latin America, Europe, North Asia, South Asia, and Africa.
In 2020, the NCDMB came up with the $50 million Nigeria Content Research and Development Fund, created for research in the oil and gas development space.
Pivotal to any meaningful and sustainable initiative is funding. So we have the 50 million Nigeria Content Research and Development Fund, which was created by the board in 2020, and it is designed to provide the much needed research fund in the oil and gas research and development space.
The keynote speaker at the event, Professor Raphael Popper, highlights competence and skills development as important tools for research and innovation to thrive.
The path to success, to be successful, requires fundamental principles of thinking ahead, to plan. If you don't build your own future, someone else will build it for you, and you will have to live there. So there are 3 fundamental principles to do foresight. You need to think strategically about the future, 10, 20, 50 years.
For the next 2 days, participants will be exchanging ideas that will help them understand the challenges and inherent opportunities so as to provide tangible outcomes to drive the nation towards a more innovative and prosperous economy.
And that's it from Abuja. It's now back to you, Ayo, for the rest of the news at 10.
Many thanks, Victoria. Enugu State Governor Peter Mbah has flagged off the construction of Notra Tractor Assembly Plant and Service Center in Enugu Metropolis with an order for 1,000 tractors to scale up agricultural production in the state. Speaking at the ceremony, Governor Mbah noted that this investment will stimulate the economy, boost growth and create employment for the teeming youth. He also reiterated his administration's commitment to de-risking investments and creating an enabling environment for businesses to thrive in Enugu.
It's going to be... We have placed an order for at least 1,000 tractors, which we hope to at least have through these assembly plants. But it's not just, it would have been easier for us to say, oh, let's order 1,000 tractors. But we didn't see the value in that, which is why we're only getting 200 already assembled and imported here. But the rest 800 will be assembled right here and manufactured here in Enugu State. Initiative like what we're doing with Notra not only creates employment opportunities, but it also stimulates our economy. It boosts that growth that we're expecting, that economic growth we're expecting to achieve here in Enugu. We're going to continue to support Notra to ensure that we provide the basic amenities, the right infrastructure, and also security, because we recognize that businesses, there are certain things they cannot absorb. So as government, we're going to continue to de-risk your investment and ensure that the basic infrastructure and the basic amenities are provided for you to thrive.
Let's get some more from the world of business, and then it's Dominic Iwewu. Dominic?
Thank you, Ayotunde. On business news, the Nigerian Interbank Settlement System will launch a bank verification number platform by December that will enable Nigerians in the diaspora operate their local bank accounts from anywhere around the world. And that's according to the governor of the central bank, Mr. Yemi Cardoso. He made the announcement during a parley with members of the Nigerian community on the sidelines of the World Bank and IMF meeting in Washington, D.C., United States. According to Mr. Cardoso, the initiative is part of efforts to ensure that Nigerians from anywhere in the world can participate in the domestic economy without any hassles and diversify their businesses. Currently, Nigerians living outside the country register with some other financial service providers, which are only available in a few locations in selected countries to get their BVN done. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry has held this year's edition of its annual Security Meets Business Dialogue series in Lagos. The forum brought together officials of the armed forces, security agencies, and members of the business community to discuss strategies for ensuring a better security ecosystem that will safeguard Nigeria's economic environment. The president of the LCCI, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, highlighted the need for collaboration between security operatives and business operators to help tackle the security challenges in a country which have far-reaching consequences for local and foreign investors.
All previous events, security agencies have always told us about the importance of collaboration among agencies, interagency collaboration. In the business community, we think that this is not only important because we see the value in businesses and we think that the value in collaboration among security agencies is extremely important, and that we should be part of that conversation to be able to help in ensuring that the tools that the security agencies need for this interagency collaboration, many of which require provision, support, and maintenance by business enterprises, are further enhanced, and we have a better understanding of the needs of the armed forces.
Nigeria and the United States have announced a plan to launch a liaison group to accelerate the combat against cybercrime and financial crimes related to digital assets. A statement released today by the U.S. Department of State says the initiative aims to improve Nigeria's capacity to investigate and prosecute cybercrime, focusing on issues such as illicit financial flows and the misuse of cryptocurrencies. The collaboration marks an essential step forward in international efforts to regulate digital finance and curb criminal activities within the increasingly complex realm of digital currencies. It's the third day of gain for the domestic equities market as investors focus their buying interest particularly on banking stocks. Daddy Williams has details of today's trading activities.
All right, let's get a check on how your money performed today at the local bourse. You see it's a marginal gain there for the all-share index. That's about 5 basis points, taking the year-to-date gain to 32.32%, almost neck and neck with inflation at 32.70%. Let's look at the sectoral performance now. We see the banking counter is on fire today with most of the tier 1 banks up. That's 2.14% for the banking counter. Oil and gas counter, that's down 0.02%. New kid on the block, Arido Holdings, that dipped about 10%, adding to that drawdown we see for the oil and gas counter. To the tier 1 banks now, FBNH is leading the tier 1 banks today. I know shareholders must be bracing for some kind of name change, at some point. So leading with 6.49%. UBA is not left out, 5.19%. GTCO stays unchanged, but it did gain yesterday. Then we see Zenith Bank with a 4.66% gain. So that's how the Wednesday, that's the midweek trading session went today. The bulls retain.
And that's it on business news. Back to Ayotunde for the rest of the news at 10.
And thank you, Dominic. At least 5 people have died and 14 more injured after an attack at a Turkish aerospace company near Ankara. The country's Interior Minister Ali Yerlikaya has described it as a terrorist attack. He also says 2 suspects were neutralized, with the Kurdish group, the PKK, likely behind the attack. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has condemned the attack alongside other countries in Europe. It's Simon Pusey with more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The US Secretary of State has urged Israel to bring the hostages home, end the war, and have a clear plan for what follows.
Turn those successes into an enduring strategic success.
Antony Blinken said Israel had succeeded in ensuring there could be no repeat of the October the 7th assault, and it should be looking to bring the remaining 101 Israeli and foreign hostages home and end the fighting. He was speaking after meeting Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and senior military officials in a series of meetings in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Mr. Blinken also repeated that the United States rejected any Israeli occupation of Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel has bombed the UNESCO-listed port city of Tyre roughly 3 hours after issuing an order online for residents to flee central areas. Huge clouds of thick smoke billowed above residential buildings. Tens of thousands of people had already fled Tyre in recent weeks as Israel steps up its campaign to destroy Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza, both close allies of Iran. Giselle Pellico, the French woman at the centre of a trial of 50 men who are accused of raping her after she was drugged by her then husband, says it's not for us to have shame, it's for them. The 72-year-old was taking the stand in court following a request from her legal team that she be given the chance to respond to the evidence and testimony that have been shared so far at the trial. Dominique has admitted to recruiting men online to rape his wife while she was under the effect of heavy sedatives and sleeping pills that he administered to her in secret for a decade. More than 30 countries have expressed a desire to join BRICS, the Russian President Vladimir Putin has told a meeting of the group. Mr. Putin said the group would discuss its expansion at the meeting while keeping in mind the need to maintain efficiency. It comes after Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi's first formal meeting in 2 years, the Indian Prime Minister and Chinese President marking an important step towards stabilizing relations between the two nations, which have been strained over border disputes. Donald Trump's team has accused the UK Labour Party of election interference as it sends volunteers to campaign for Kamala Harris in the US election. The row was sparked by a LinkedIn post last week from Labour's head of operations, Sophia Patel, who said she had 10 spots available for anyone available to head to the battleground state of North Carolina. Mr. Trump's campaign has filed a complaint to the US Federal Election Commission accusing the UK's Labour Party of blatant foreign interference in the election. This is despite many right-wing political figures lending their support to Mr. Trump in this and previous campaigns. Meanwhile, rapper Eminem has introduced the former US President Barack Obama at a Harris campaign rally in Detroit in Michigan.
Detroit! What up, though?
The Detroit native said he participated in the rally for a couple of important reasons and encouraged people to vote.
The city of Detroit and the whole state of Michigan mean a lot to me. President Barack Obama.
The former US president then kicked off his speech with the first lines of Eminem's hit Lose Yourself.
So I don't usually get nervous, but I was feeling some kind of way following Eminem. I mean, I notice my palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, vomit on my sweater already, mom's spaghetti.
Mr. Obama will stay on the campaign trail in the coming days, where he is scheduled to appear at a concert and rally with rock legend Bruce Springsteen in Atlanta. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Chris Williams is standing by to give us the very latest in the world of sports. Chris.
Thank you, Ayo. Welcome to Sports News. President Bola Tinubu has appointed Chio Diko as the chairman of the National Sports Commission. This appointment comes after the federal government scrapped the Ministry of Sports Development and had its functions transferred to the National Sports Commission in order to develop a vibrant sports economy. Diko, the Kaduna State-born football administrator, was the chairman of the league management company responsible for the management of the Nigeria Professional Football League and second vice chairman, Nigeria Football Federation. He previously served as a consultant for the Nigerian House of Representatives on Sports Committee. In the UEFA Champions League, Atlanta were frustrated by Celtic as the two sides played out a goalless draw. Struggling Brest held Bayern Leverkusen to an entertaining 1-1 draw, while Lille shocked Atletico Madrid 3-1. Rafinha scored a stunning hat-trick as Barcelona hammered Bayern Munich 4-1, and Feyenoord were 3-1 winners over Benfica. In other results, Manchester City thrashed Sparta Prague 5-0, and Liverpool edged Leipzig by a lone goal. Salzburg lost 2-0 at home to Dynamo Zagreb, while Young Boys also lost at home 1-0 to Inter Milan. In the Europa League, Fenerbahce boss Jose Mourinho believes Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur are the favourite to win the title. Fenerbahce are preparing for their third group phase match against United, a club Mourinho managed for 2.5 seasons, winning the competition in 2017, while he also guided Spurs to a League Cup final.
Say now, which are the two biggest candidates to win Europa League? I think it's easy. Man United and Tottenham. It's easy. Premier League is a different level of quality, is a different level of intensity, is a different level of pace, is a different level of tactical culture, is a different level of everything. So I think tomorrow we are going to play against one of the two strongest teams.
Meanwhile, Manchester United trained earlier today before heading to Turkey, where they will face Fenerbahce. United are still seeking their first win in the competition after drawing their first two games and currently lie 21st out of 36 teams on the table, while Fenerbahce sits on the 13th place with 4 points from their two matches. In tennis, Bianca Andreescu advanced to the quarterfinals of the Pan-Pacific Open in Japan after her opponent, Beatriz Haddad-Maia of Brazil, retired due to a back injury while trailing in the first set.
Game, Andreescu. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, Miss Haddad-Maia is forced to retire due to an injury. Miss Andreescu ends 3-0.
That sports is back to you, Ayo.
Thank you so much, Chris. And the main news again. President Bola Tinubu has sacked 5 ministers from his cabinet and has forwarded to the National Assembly 7 ministerial nominees to take over from the vacant positions. Also, President Bola Tinubu has sacked the Ministers of Women Affairs, Tourism, Education, State Minister of Housing and Urban Development, and Youth Development. And the president also scrapped 2 ministries, that of Niger Delta and Sports Development, and merged the Ministry of Tourism with Culture and Creative Economy. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun. Have a good night and please stay safe.